Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use No Red Ink for our tutorial sessions that we have coming up. First, you'll need to create an account. I recommend using your school email, and then it'll ask you what school you are associated with as well as the content that you teach. After that, you will click on this little tab right up here and you will get this screen. So then you will click to add a new class. And then you'll enter in the class's name. I highly recommend um, using not only the specific division of the test that you're going to be tutoring, but also your last name so that students don't get confused if more than one of us are going to be teaching them throughout the tutorial time. So for example, I would probably make mine tutorial group editing AVRID. After that, you'll identify what grades these students are in. Because we'll have a combination of both freshmen and sophomores in these classes, we will click 9 and 10, and then click to add a new class. After that, it's going to give you 3 different options through which you can have students join this group. The first is to send them a link. If you are using Google Classroom, this might be a really effective means to share the link with students. Because we don't have access to all of their emails, that might be a little bit difficult if you're not using Google Classroom. Also, when students create accounts, you can have them join using your class code. This could also work through Classroom, or you can simply write it on the board on the first day. The last option is down here where it says, I want to manually create accounts for my students. This is going to make it to where you have to enter in quite a bit of information for each student and is very time consuming, especially considering that we don't have access to all of their information. Because of this, I highly recommend using one of these 2 options. At this point, you are going to click Browse and Assign, and this will show you all of the assignments that you can give to your students. There are 4 different categories: practice, writing, assessment, and standards and tests. I will be showing you guys how to use the practice section as well as the writing section because that's what we'll use for tutorials. We most likely will not be using the assessment category because we have already assessed these students through both the fall and the spring benchmark. And then we likely will not be testing them. You might want to use this if you are going to do some sort of practice test at the end of your tutorial session. But the likelihood is these 2 are the ones that we're going to be using the most. So first, we're going to start with practice. As you can see, there are multiple categories that match standards through which our students can practice. So let's say that my students really struggle with sentences, phrases, and clauses. So I'm going to select this topic. As you can see, each topic is also broken down into many subcategories, and then you'll see if they have passages or if they simply have practice lessons, and those are the topics. So let's say that my students really struggle with the components of a sentence. They simply cannot identify them. So I'm going to click this. Now you'll notice that some of these have checkboxes and some of these have these little locks. The checkboxes mean that these are available for you to assign. The locks mean that these are we are unable to assign these because we have not paid for the premium version of No Red Ink. You'll also notice that there are little icons off to the side. So this is an interactive tutorial for students, and this will appear at the beginning of their practice. I'm not going to walk you through it because you'll see an example when we click on a different icon. This is the lesson. In this, it breaks down the sentence for your students, and this would be really beneficial to use in your mini lesson. And then here we are allowed to preview the topic. So this is that interactive tutorial that I talked about, and this is what your students will see. So they'll see identifying the subject of a sentence. The subject is the part of the sentence that is doing or being. Together, a subject and a verb form a sentence. And then they'll see some examples. And then we'll move on. All right, and now they get to kind of practice before they go into the practice that data will be collected on. So in this particular question, we have to find out what is the subject of this sentence. On Tuesday, my friend ran all the way to school. So let's say I really struggle with subjects and I think it's on Tuesday. So if I click this, it'll tell me that it's not quite right. So it tells me that on Tuesday is not the subject because it's not doing an action. So now it gives me the hint of trying to identify who ran. So then I can say, oh, who ran? My friend did, and click here. And it will tell me that I've gotten it correct. So now it will take me to the practice section. Your students will not see this part because when they first create their account, they're going to go through all of No Red Ink and they are going to click on things that interest them. So movies, books, TV shows are all going to be available. And what it does is it takes characters and ideas from these things that your students have selected that they like, and it inputs them into the sentences. This makes it more engaging for your students because the practices involve things that they're interested in rather than being random subjects or ideas that they don't really care about. So on the practice, it tells us to select the subject of a sentence. With this, you'll hover over with your mouse and different parts of it will be highlighted. So now we need to select the subject of our sentence. Again, let's say that I'm still really confused by this. So I'm going to click on water as the subject and submit my answer. And then it tells me that it's not quite right. So what's really great about this is that it offers immediate feedback for your students. And then they get to try the same thing again. And now that they've messed up, they can also see a hint. And this will bring up those rules again for them so that they can review it. So now that I've looked at it, I'm like, you know what? I think maybe the Venus flytraps might be my subject. And so I can click on that, but then I also need to click on watered again to unhighlight that word. And then I will submit my answer, and I've gotten it correct. So as you can see at the top, it says, great, answer one more correctly to continue. And then it puts a little check mark over here. What that does is ensure that your students aren't just rapidly clicking through things to get done. Instead, they are actually having to show that they are mastering a skill in order to move forward and move on. And so when you do click it and it's correct, it says it's 2 in a row and it moves you on to more advanced sentences. So now that we've seen that, I'm going to show you how to actually assign them. So in order to do this, you will simply click on the checkbox right over here, and then you'll see down here at the bottom, it says one topic selected, and this will take about 5 to 10 minutes for students to complete. Now, our tutorial sessions are 40 minutes total, and so you want to leave about 5 minutes to do your mini lesson, but you still want to make sure there's enough activities to keep your students occupied the entire time. So I would probably also click another one. This tells me it will take students about 10 to 20 minutes. And now we're at about 15 to 30. I always recommend adding in more than you need because some students will only take 15 minutes, especially probably on something as easy as this. So I'm going to select 4 for my first lesson, so that takes about 20 to 40 minutes. I also don't assign any of these as homework, so if they don't finish, they're not obligated to do them at home. Instead, we'll simply pick back up at the next tutoring session. So now I will assign the practice. If you have more than one class, you'll check which classes you want to assign it to. You'll also pick a start date for when you want your assignment to become available for your students. I'm going to select that it will be available next Monday, and then I'm also going to pick that it's going to be available at 7 a.m., which is when tutorials begin. Then I'll also pick a date that it's due. I will pick the last day of this week at 3:15 because that is when we get out of school. For the assignment name, I'm going to call it Week 1 Components of a Sentence. And I apologize, this should be 4:15 because that's when tutoring ends. You also need to assign points for the assignment. Because these aren't actually graded, I usually just leave it at the default. You can also uncheck if you're going to allow late submissions, and then you will click Assign. And here you can see your assignment. So we have three categories, ones that are in progress, ones that are coming up, and then ones that have already passed. You also have all of these icons over here that allow you to do multiple things. This allows you to preview your assignment like we did previously. Once you start collecting data, it will be shown here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So once you have students, their names will be over on this side, and it will show you how students are doing with each of these. So once you start getting your data, let me know and we can walk through it. Over here, it shows you how well they're doing. So it'll show you that maybe next week, one of your students really needs remediation with this while another one is fine. And you can also create more classes or divide students up so where the assignments go to some students and not others. This allows you to edit your assignment. This allows you to share it. So for example, if another teacher and I were both doing editing, we might share this assignment with one another so that way we can compare our data. And then in more actions, you can make a copy of your assignment or delete it. So then if we go back to browse and assign, we can assign more practices, or for those of you who are teaching composition and revision, we can click on this. And there are 4 different things that you can do. You can have your students do a quick write, you can have them do a guided draft, a peer review, and a self-review. Let's look at the quick write. So on this, you can work through any of these categories. I feel like we'll mostly be using skill building, so I'm going to click on this. Here, this is really great for revision. You can have them practice commonly confused words, punctuation, a whole bunch of different things. Or if you're like, skill building is not actually what I want, you can click on the other sections. Again, we can't access everything because we haven't bought the premium version, but there's still quite a few writing assignments, and I think enough to last us through the entirety of tutorials. So if we go back to skill building, and punctuation and combining sentences. Here, we can also preview the assignments and see what they'll look like. Right now, there's not a whole lot on these, so you may also want to expand the instructions for your students. So if we click assign, it brings this up. And so you can actually add information for your students if they need it. You can also create a minimum length if you are actually doing like a quick write or something of that nature, and then there will be a word minimum. You can also add focus points. So I'm going to show you how to do that on one where a focus point would be more effective, such as for compositions. So if we go to, let's just look at it just for fun. So you can pick whether students are going to argue something, describe something, reflect, tell a story. Arguing would probably be very good for persuasive practice. So based on a book, let's click this one. So here's the prompt. Again, you can add to it if you would like to. Here's the minimum. And so for a focus point, especially with our persuasive essays, I might tell students that they really need to make sure that they have a strong thesis statement. And then I'm going to describe what I expect students to have there. So they need to have a specific thesis that states a position. I'll add that focus, and now the students know what I'm really going to be looking for as they create these compositions. Down here, it tells me about how long this should take students. And then as you can see, the more words that we assign, the longer it will probably take them. Once you do start getting that data, it's all also going to be available right here. So you'll be able to see how students are doing on particular assignments. Again, their names will be here and they'll have different colored dots depending on how well they're doing. And then over here on the mastery side, it gives you every single topic that this program has. Their names again will be over here on this side, and you can see how well they're doing throughout the entire program. Once you start getting data, again, please let me know and we can look at it together and we can figure out how you can best use this program for the topics your students are still struggling with. So that is about all I have. If you have any more questions, please let me know, and then have a great day.